Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, as we are currently in Group B, determining which players are going to be moving on. To my right, I do have Rotterdam and Maynard joining me to accompany me through some of the series that are going to be occurring while this one is happening. I believe Alive versus Harston will be yours, Rotterdam, and we will have TY versus Jiangxi covered by Maynard in just a little bit. For now, though, we have Neeb versus Stats on the way. A fantastic-looking PvP. After Neeb, for the longest time, looked like an absolute monster in this matchup.
Well, if we just think it wasn't actually that long ago when PvP was all of Neeb's bag right there, and I mean, he had a really good series against Harston. We just saw the end of that. So I'm pretty excited for this one. It's very, very explosive, figuratively and literally, and I think it's probably tied for my favorite mirror matchup. So I'm very excited for this one.
Rotterdam, what do you think about Neeb versus Stats?
That's awesome. I mean, you don't have to be a Protoss player to be excited about that one. It's going to be really cool. I genuinely believe that Neeb is not an underdog there. I think that's 50-50. I am not 100% sure about Stats, his PvP right now. Obviously, after this series, we'll know a lot more. I mean, Stats is a world-class Protoss. According to many, the best Protoss in the world. Yeah. But when it comes to PvP, I have a lot of faith in our boy Neeb. It's going to be a great series, James.
Neeb has been one of the most successful for non-Koreans now for a good year and a bit, I would say, with especially him taking that win over at Kesper Cup, with actually a lot of PvP off the back of that. Of course, it's changed a little bit, but not massive amounts since then, right?
The biggest change is that back then, when you are both settled and stabilized on 3 bases, and even though a lot of the Koreans didn't really embrace the Disruptor Watch, you know, they kept trying to win with Immortal Adept pushes, and it's like, no, it really doesn't work anymore, guys. But then there was a certain time where I was like, all right, you know, we got Stalkers, we got Disruptors, we got upgrades, and if it's even or we're both on 3 bases, then it's time to get ready for that next phase, which used to be a whole bunch of Tempest. The more Tempest, the merrier, and at a certain point just one shot. But the Tempest got changed and nerfed a lot. It used to be 4 supply, now it's 6 supply. Used to have something crazy like 15 range against ground,
and
right?
A lot more damage.
And now it's 9. Like, that's massive. Those are massive changes. So you don't really see these people sitting back on 35 Tempest anymore. That's just not happening. What you might see, though, is carriers. The carriers have arrived in PvP as well, but once again, you have to get there first. If this man that's on the screen right now decides to just, no, I want to win this game with Immortals, Adepts, a couple of Blink Stalkers, and we'll see how it goes, then obviously you're not going to see carriers. But if both players make it up to 3 bases, if they both get a whole bunch of Blink Stalkers and Disruptors, and at that point, obviously attacking is very hard because you're running into your opponent's Disruptors, and that's borderline impossible. So unless you do something truly crazy with Harass, you're going to see carriers.
Well, there was Stats on our screen there for a moment. Obviously, you know, he's taken second at the Intel Extreme Masters Gyeonggi before and things like that. Even the 3rd and 4th through Kesper Cup. But are you guys kind of surprised he hasn't had a first place just yet here or there, considering how many tournaments he's been at recently?
In regards to Stats?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like he obviously got really, really close at Intel Extreme Masters Gyeonggi. He made it all the way to the Grand Final. Didn't pan out for him, to say the least, in the Grand Final there. But I think that he's Grand Final caliber, for sure. He could absolutely win one of these tournaments, if not this one. So I would not be shocked at all to see him go through Group B and go all the way to the end at Spodek Arena.
Rotterdam, do you have any current updates from Alive versus Harston?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about game number 1, and game 2 is on the way. So if you guys want to jump to my laptop real quick, we can do that for a split second, even though there isn't crazy much happening, but just to give you guys a feel for what is happening. The Dutch community is fanatic. Everybody wants to know how well Harston is doing. Unfortunately, I've got bad news for my Dutch brothers. Harston lost game number 1. It was your traditional Adept Phoenix trying to survive, and it looked close up to a point where Alive had like 6 or 7 mines, and Harston was forced to walk into it, and the mines just exploded all over the Protoss army. Game number 2 did not start off great for Harston. You can see it over here. 9 probes fell, 3 Adepts have already gone down on the Oracle and Phoenix, and all that for a mine, 6 Marines, and a medevac. So things are just not looking good for the Dutchman. Hopefully he can turn it around here in game number 2. I'll obviously keep a close eye on it, but game number 1 looked a lot better, and that didn't go in his way, so it would be weird if this suddenly does go in his way.
Yeah. As much as your allegiances are with your Dutch brother, I think it's a very tough group for him. It's a really stacked group, I would say.
It's one of these groups where Harston has to be at his absolute best. You know, as the Muslim likes to say, he has to play his A++ game. Then I do think he can do it. But if Harston is not the absolute best Harston he can be, yeah, it's going to be a very tough task.
All right, well, we're just getting geared up now for Neeb versus Stats. I got to ask you guys before we go in, any predictions on who you think is going to take this and potentially a score?
I'm going to say that Stats still 2-0s here, but I think that each of the games are going to be very, very close.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Roddy.
Go on, Roddy. Give him it. Give him it.
Neeb wins 2-1.
Yeah? All right, well, I think we are almost ready now to go over to our commentary team. So without further ado, for Neeb and Stats, we head over here for the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice.
What's up, guys? Tazes and Todd here, and we're going into a very exciting PvP. I am rooting for my boy Neeb from America. Cannot wait.
Is it time to fight for some freedom?
That's right.
I love these PvPs. These two, they've met in the past 2 times, actually. One time was at the Kespa Cup, in which Neeb was very successful. He won 3-1. And then they met again in StarCraft this time around. I think it was Stats that won, but I mean, it's 2 of the best PvPs in the world. It's America against South Korea, and it's basically God against God. Well, two very good players.
I remember the day that Neeb won big in Korea, and it was just crazy. I didn't know if that was ever going
Were
to
there
happen.
riots?
Yes.
People celebrating on the streets?
It was, I mean, I certainly was. Man, I was a one-man celebration at that moment. No, I mean, seriously, it was just so crazy. I thought, because that might never happen, you know, a non-Korean winning a major StarCraft tournament when we know so much about this game. I mean, before that, it was Gur or Guillaume Patry who won, but that was like back when nobody really understood the game.
15 years before or something, like a long
yeah,
time.
I think it might have been longer than that, but yeah, it was so long ago that it counts, but it's very, very different than what we saw there.
It felt a little bit surreal too.
Yeah,
didn't it?
yeah.
It was like, really? Like, finally, did it happen? Like, is that possible? But
Well,
yeah,
you know, it's like, for me, not just as an American, but just as somebody who's not a Korean, I'm watching this and I'm like, wow, he won. That's great. I really want him to keep doing it. And he keeps doing it. And I'm like, oh my God. He's actually going to win this tournament. It's crazy. So I got my fingers crossed for him here. Of course, his opponent, Stats, is possibly the best Protoss in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Neeb's PvP is a little bit different than what a lot of the Koreans are used to in that matchup. He played a lot more defensive and safe. And I think Korean PvP, not always, but at times, has been a lot more risks and crazy builds and trying to counter certain things. Anyways, on to this game. Guys, tell your friends to join us here at the Intel Extreme Masters. In the bottom right, in the red, he is Stats. His opponent here in the bottom left, in the blue, he is Neeb.
thanks for the nerd shields.
Neeb. You're so crazy.
Neeb is a big fan of these warlords here. We've seen him do a lot of these, and that's because I'm guessing he doesn't like to play against adepts entering his base. Sometimes he's going to disguise his build order as well, hide a Stargate in the back of his base. He's not afraid to take risks, so to speak. Stats doesn't go for the warlords. The 2 gateways, the standard opener that we're going to see a lot of the time in PvP. For some time, it had kind of developed into a matchup where both players, they get a couple units, usually adepts into stalkers or 4 stalkers, and you get a nexus going pretty quickly off the back of that, and then you go into some sort of tech. Usually Twilight Council or Stargate will be the main 2. But nowadays, we've seen a lot of crazier stuff being thrown out there. For a long time, actually, it used to be all about these adepts and resonating glaives. You couldn't really go blink. Then people really brought back blink into fashion, plus disruptors to face adepts. And now we're actually seeing, it's kind of like bio and mech in TVT. We're seeing a lot of the time blink versus resonating glaives adept.
Yeah.
And there is no really best style, it feels like.
Do
It
you,
really depends on how you play.
I'm curious about this because obviously you're a very good Protoss player. What do you think is Neeb's greatest weakness when you watch him play? Is there anything that he does that you find to be questionable, or is in this matchup he just pretty much all around solid?
Yeah, it's hard to name one. I would say at times it's been the way it's predictable because Neeb likes to play, for the most part, fairly standard. You know, he has his own builds and he relies a lot on his mechanics. So as much as it's always going to be hard to beat him, if you know that your opponents are almost always going to be playing standard, there are a lot of things that you can throw in there to try and kill him, and in particular in the early game. In the late game, I've very rarely seen him lose just because he's so solid mechanically, but if you can somehow surprise him early on in the game, if you can play to the fact that he doesn't know what you're going for, maybe you can surprise him and kill him. Did you see that? 2 ships flying side to side.
Side by side. A moment where they just have to start mad dogging each other, the 2 mothership cores, as they go by. Nice block there, by the way, by Neeb, bouncing those adepts back out. Looks like one's going to be a little bit bruised here before it will eventually be able to shade away. He does actually get the probe. Oh, nice. I didn't actually see the Stalkers over there until we just put the screen there. So good catch. And it looks like he's probably going to try to run from this, although it's not going to be easy. It looks like the rest of Neeb's army is going to be coming up here to possibly meet that. And eventually Stats backs off. To what we were talking about earlier, Todd, it's funny because when I look at Stats, I feel like he really is kind of the well-rounded, can-do-it-all Protoss, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think this is going to be really cool to see how this ends up.
I feel that they're actually a little bit similar in a way, where Stats is super sound mechanically as well. As of late, he's had super refined builds, and it's like you said, like, I don't even think we need to add the arguably. I think he's the best Protoss in the world right now, results-wise. He's been absolutely insane. So we saw actually Stats going for an early Twilight Council, no Robo just yet, whereas Neeb went for Robo first, so a little bit safer. And this is what I was talking about. You know, sometimes Neeb refuses to take those risks that most other players would.
Sometimes when you see players that do this, it pans out really well for them. You know.
Oh, he actually shades in.
Oh my God, he got in. He gets the sentry. Force field, not too helpful, but it looks like 2 adepts are going to go down. This adept over here is going to try to get as many probes, possibly trying to shade out in the process.
Look at that micro. No probe died, and all 3 of them got injured.
Isn't that funny? I mean, I guess getting the sentry certainly helps, but yeah.
I would have lost 6 probes there.
Yeah, no, Tasis would have lost 9 probes. If Tasis would have lost, he would have killed the Nexus somehow. I'm like, God, this is why I'm a caster. You're so good, Stats. But yeah, we got a Warp Prism on the way by coming up here. He may use this just to try to pin Stats, especially in these spots. You will always get a Warp Prism over there, unless if they're not getting a Stargate.
It's a bit strange, though. Usually you would do that if you're going at depths, but now he's going Blink Stalkers. Like, so if he wants to be aggressive, he could, but because Stats has his Blink slightly earlier than Neeb, if that completes and he somehow snipes this Prism and the units that are being thrown at him, this is going to be a disaster scenario.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. Let's go ahead and see what he does with that Warp Prism. He's on the back of that going ahead and getting Immortals here. And it looks like the Hallucinated Phoenix just missed that. He may actually just be getting this to send the 1 Adept in there, see what's going on in the main.
1 Adept I don't think is worth it because you have to attack the probes. I guess it takes 2 shots, right? So at least 2 Adepts. Sure. At least 2 Adepts. Maybe like 2 in the Prism in the main.
Maybe 3.
And then,
let's see if we get 4.
Usually you would shade 2 in the natural at the same time to try to really do some good economic damage. But like I said, this is very risky. Like Blink is closing in very rapidly for Stats. He's got pylons covered. I feel like I'm watching Brood Warrior for a little bit.
That's actually what I was thinking. This is a little bit less common in StarCraft II, but in Brood War, especially in PvP, you'd line the edges of your base with pylons so that you could see anything coming in way ahead of time because drops are so powerful. But this is a good technique being used here by Stats.
Oh!
It looks like the Warp Prism is under attack. It needs to get over the sledge. And he will, I believe, just barely save that.
He actually panicked. He might have been able to fly away. Well, he does fly away regardless, but that Warp Prism is super injured and he's going to have to pull back for now. Both players going for Robo Bay, with Neeb having his a little bit earlier. Now Neeb, he's maybe the best Disruptor player I've seen.
I think you're probably right about
so good
that.
with it.
I think that's how he actually ends up beating so many of these Koreans. Even if he's maybe even a little bit behind, he can usually turn that around with the Disruptors.
Now remember, when they played previously in the Kespa Cup, it was a 3-1 for Neeb, and back then he was just on fire. There really didn't seem to be much anybody could do against him. As of late, he's not been playing as well, and Stats has been the one that's been playing out of his mind. So maybe that'll come into consideration. I would love to see Neeb on the same level that he was in the Kespa Cup.
That would be very exciting. Well, we might get to see it here. We have the 3rd base being made roughly at the same time for both of these guys. It looks like Stats is going to finish up a little bit more quickly, but overall, it's been a fairly even game. I think we're going to have to wait and see. Oh, hold up. He's going to get the Warp Prism, and it goes down, shut down there by Stats.
Yeah, that was... I think he was looking for that. He was just moving in that position, hoping that would be around. He had an observer there to spot that. He saw it move back a little bit, and a big win here for Stats, who now takes a pretty good supply lead.
We see the Stalkers now blinking back I think with the Disruptor there, it would be unwise for Stats to try to commit to this attack. And we see that one coming up there, chucking that forward, damaging the Immortal and killing that Sentry.
I thought you were going to go for the special effects there with the force fields and the Disruptor, but...
Let me try to do it next time there's a battle if we got a force fields. Let's see if we can do this. Right, ready? No, hold on. Not yet. Oh, nice job, though, there. Okay, you got to be careful. In Disruptor versus Disruptor, things can fall apart pretty quickly. Normally, Blink is used to get away from the Disruptor balls.
Yeah.
Occasionally, we see them blink forward to try to kill the Disruptor before it can do any more damage.
They have the exact same army. I'm surprised that Stas is so eager to try and get into a fight.
I know,
especially against Neeb.
It seems a little bit risky, right? Like trying to get further ahead, but he's going to decide to come in here. Now, the angling here for Stats is pretty damn good, and Neeb is getting bunched into a corner.
He sniped the observers of Stats. This is huge. He could actually stalk Stats' army with his own observer and have vision the whole time. Both players still equal on
oh my
the
god!
observers. Oh, he killed 4 probes with that. That's not bad, but
Nicely
not the
done.
end of the world.
Looks like Disruptors are coming forward, but he does not manage to kill that. The Disruptor is assassinated before it can complete its explosion. Mothership Core now being nudged forward. He might have to use some pylon cannons here if Stats keeps this pressure up.
How did these Stalkers even get there? He must have had them hidden somewhere, or... I don't know, because like, if I look at the minimap, I don't see anything that crossed it through the top. Maybe with the Warp Prism earlier, but he had lost that, so I don't know how he got them there. Second Robo on the way now for Stats, who's fully ready to embrace the PvP of the new age with massive Disruptors.
Let's see how he does. They're going to be coming up here from the top. The Nexus may be a little bit exposed here. Keep in mind, it's also possible you could put a Disruptor down there at the bottom and try to run that into where the probes are during a fight. But instead, it looks like Stats wants to try to do a full-on fight. 106 supply to 130. Stats is almost committed right now, and he's going to come through here. Oh, great connection.
You want to be careful not to have yourself pushed against the wall like Neeb is there, because then you're trapped and Stats actually going to move right in there. He's got way more Stalkers than Neeb right now. He's going to try to close this game out.
And this is a really uncomfortable spot here for Stats, or excuse me, for Neeb to be in. But it's also possible if Stats messes this up, he could end up losing the game. However, I think with this many Stalkers blinking forward, taking out the Immortal, GG, Stats takes game number 1.
The times have changed. And since Kiss back up, Stats has improved quite a bit here.
Well, that's the thing I've always been saying about Stats is he just seems to be, like every time I cast him, he looks a little bit better than the time before. He's not one of these players that his skill has been yo-yoing up and down.
Like me?
No, his skill has been YOLOing, all right? Stats is YOLO Baggins over here. This guy has just constantly been improving. It's super impressive. I hope Neeb can come back. I'm rooting for him myself personally as an American, but it's going to be tough. Kalaris, what's going on in these other games?
A little bit going on, actually. Thank you very much, gents. As we do have 2 series going on, TY versus Jackji and Alive versus Hearthstone, which concluded. Let's check in with Maynard first, though. TY versus Jackji at the moment. What's the score and what's the current state?
TY is 1-0 up on Jakji, and that was on Belshire Vestige. Sorry, on Newkirk Precinct.
Okay.
We're on Cactus Valley at the moment for Game 2. It's very, very early stages TVT, and no one's doing anything insane. So, you know, there's not going to be an action for a while. But so game number 1, basically, TY picked the exact right time to push, just as Jakji was taking his third.
Yes.
This was also, by the way, on Crank's Twitch channel. Obviously being Korean, but the VOD will be there. And TY just really completely crushed Jakji with the attack. Jakji was a little bit indecisive. He was going to attack TY. TY sort of went around his army. He was already sieging his natural, and Jakji decided, he's like, oh, do I attack? Do I come back? Do I attack? Do I come back? And he just, you know, it took him a little bit too long to react, and TY capitalized on it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Maynard. Now checking in with Rotterdam, who did have a live versus Hearthstone, and I think, unfortunately for you, Roddy,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
It's dark times being a Dutch protoss right now. Let's go ahead and jump to my game real quick, as it's going to take like a minute or two to show you guys exactly what I want to show you. I told you guys that he had a very rough start on Newkirk, which was obviously the case. But we can go ahead and jump into the laptop and show you guys that the game actually took a couple of surprising turns. Up to this point, Hearthstone was pretty far behind, so he couldn't really get any upgrades, right? He had a decent army, but he's down in army supply against a Terran. That's never never a good sign. He's down in upgrades. And then this happened, which was just crazy. So he finds his double drop. He completely shuts it down. Couple of photon overcharges as well. Takes absolutely 0 damage. And then this army, he just shades on top of it. And he wipes out this entire army as well. And out of nowhere, obviously he can chase down this medevac as well. Suddenly Harstem is up 40 supplies. So you'd be like, man, that's great news, right? That's awesome. Well, it was awesome, but I can fast forward for a while. Alive played it very safe. He's like, okay, I can't move out right now. I've got Widow Mines, got Liberators. And I don't know how fast he did it, but suddenly Alive goes up to 170, 180 supply. And then he runs across the map and he's like, hey, my army is better than your army. That's a Tillerman reference for the old school Warcraft 3 players out there. So he kills his Nexus. Harstem is forced to take a fight that, no man really wants to take. And here we go. And well, if you play Protoss, cover your eyes. It's not pretty.
It feels like his army didn't get much bigger than just the Adepts that he previously had that whole time.
Oh, God.
Boof,
The
boof,
mines,
boof.
man.
That's some scary
mines.
stuff.
So
The
yeah.
mines!
And that's all she wrote. Alive takes the series 2-0 over Harstem.
All right, well, thank you very much, gents. Currently, what we see out there between Neeb and Stats, Stats just looks phenomenal with his army positioning.
If you talk about being clutch and decisive, every single disruptor that was within range didn't hesitate for a second. Bam, he sniped all of them. He didn't eat a single shot because he kept killing them.
Yeah.
We joke about like patience blinks, but he also made a couple of forward blinks, but it's really good because every time he just you could see he focus fired the disruptor, but it wasn't over focus fire. The back of his army was never derping. It's just the right amount of units that was in range. He killed all of them.
Yep.
Neeb's gonna have to be more decisive if he wants to turn it around.
All right, well, thank you very much, gents, as we do get back into game number 2 between Neeb and Stats with Toddless.
It's time to go into game number 2 here, Stats versus Neeb. I got to say, when we were looking at that last game, we were both a little bit confused that Stats was actually engaging when he had the same number of units. I mean, that really, I guess, is an indicator of how confident he is in PvP with his control. Because, generally the rule is you want to be pushing out when you're at least somewhat clearly ahead.
When you got a supply lead, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you have a supply lead.
He had a slight supply lead, and I think he had a couple extra units, but maybe it was like 1 or 2 stalkers. But for him to be able to realize that, to consistently look at his army, look at the opponents, and be like, I have more, let's go.
Yeah.
It's actually insane.
Oh, it's interesting. All right, I got my fingers crossed for Neeb. Let's do this. In the upper left, in the red, he is Stats. His opponent in the bottom right, in the blue, he is Neeb. You ready? You gotta make it match with the music we're playing, guys. This is the perfect idea to do that in.
You're very good at it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Neeb and Stats both are 1-0 here in this group, so pretty important match. You want to make sure you can go up 2-0 in such a tough group as well. So far, Stats been running the show. I was a little bit surprised at how timid Neeb seemed to be, because even if you realize you're a little bit behind, usually just to keep on pulling back the way he was doing it and find himself up against the wall, literally, between his third and natural base, is how you basically instantly lose those disruptors. It's disruptor wars, right? Because there's nowhere to run.
Yeah, it's funny because I think in older iterations of StarCraft II, you would look at a PvP and be like, that's not normally the angle you want to attack from, right? You want to be able to, get your reinforcements there and have the opportunity to escape. But yeah, getting behind the disruptors like that. And I think also Stats really abused the fact that that third base area, there's not really that many locations to run and hide in. You're kind of running through minerals and gases, and then there's a ridge there. So, I mean, the decision-making becomes much easier for Stats when he sends his disruptors in, for instance. And getting that arc around that was just perfect, I thought. So really nicely done by him.
I feel like there's also this thing where, if you're being aggressive and your opponent is showing timidity and kind of, camping, playing back like he's showing that he's scared, you kind of feed off it. You can smell it here and you want to go for it even more.
My map. Moving around there. And I think that might be something that Neeb will have to work on if we're going to go into game 2. Because, yeah, to be honest, if there's Blink Stalkers and Disruptors out on the map, the guy who's got most control of the map and is able to move around has a lot more opportunities to just win a big fight versus the guy who's bunched up next to his expansion.
Yeah. Neeb actually goes for a robo there instead of just getting the standard Nexus that you would see a lot of the time.
Yeah.
He gets a pylon down the ramp, which will allow him to help and defend a Nexus, but will also allow him to spot units when they're headed towards his wall, because the Nexus building has very little vision.
Yeah.
So since he thinks that there could be some adepts, and there actually are some on the way, he could actually wall off that ramp, if need be, on the high ground to make sure that he actually keeps his robo stealth and unrevealed. Maybe a quick disruptor drop off the back of this.
Yeah, this has kind of gone in and out of style a couple times in PvP, getting that disruptor out there. But yeah, I think why not get that over there and see if you can pick off some workers. And it looks like we're going to have just that here coming from Neeb.
Oh, this is interesting, especially since Stats opened Blink last game, but it's such a long research to actually complete. And the robo is just barely outside of the range where Stats would have been able to spot that by shading forward.
Now with the 4 adepts here, it doesn't seem like there's quite the muscle in Neeb's base for him to actually try to chase this off.
It's so crazy, like you can't shade there if you're Stats, because then you will lose all adepts to overcharge on that pylon.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't even have the vision to see, even if he shaded there, he wouldn't have the vision, I think, to see the robo. So really great building positioning here from Neeb. I really like that.
It's funny because, you know, you look at some games and I think the players are just putting the buildings wherever they feel like it. And then there's other games where you have everything completely mapped out. This was all planned out. And I think, Neeb, you're totally right, definitely utilizing that in this situation.
Stats going for the Twilight Council, so most likely going to be the standard Blink, unless he wants to play a little bit more special with Resonating Glaives. Gravitic Drive and the first Disruptor are going to be on the way, and that's going to be one fast War Prism, my friend, against a very slow tech to any kind of Blink here, if he was even to get that for Stats. So I'm liking the build order here for Neeb. What he gave up was maybe, I guess, the capability of producing as many units as Stats, which could be a danger here, because Stats posturing forward with the Prism. So if he makes a ton of units, snipes that pylon, which has already been injured, Neeb could be in trouble, be forced maybe to stay at home with the Disruptor. Yeah. It could be a disaster there.
Looks like one Stalker out here on the map. These Adepts do chase away that Stalker so that the War Prism can actually come around here from behind. And this might actually catch Neeb off guard. Oh, this is so cute. He shades in there, and then, of course, most players would think that obviously they'd never do that. And then he has the War Prism over here to try to pick it up, taking some damage, and it... Ooh, that was crazy.
That was really
That actually
close.
turned me into an owl for a second. I'm like, woo, 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 woo. No, Taze is an owl and he can never cast again.
Imagine
I want to be a boy again.
What would your GG sound like?
Like, woo, woo. But that's all I can do the whole cast.
You need to stay like the real Taze.
I'm not even a talking owl like that one that wants to know how many licks to the center of a Tootsie Roll pop. It's just, I'm just a basic owl that can turn his head 360 degrees. But I don't need to turn my head. Hold on a second. We got a War Prism coming up here right now. Disruptor does take out that one sentry.
Yeah, that's really not worth it. Like, ideally, you would have liked to maybe go for some probe, get a whole bunch or more units. Good defense from Stats, good splits.
Yeah, that was really nicely done.
The passing spaceship going at warp speed.
That's right, warp speed, guys. No, I think that that was a pretty decent, especially, I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize how impactful it is if you take out 1 or 2 sentries, because you always need 1 or 2 out there. Hold up. Disruptor drop coming up. And only, was that 1 probe?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 probe there. He does save the Disruptor and get out. But yeah, whenever you take out sentries against a Protoss player, they usually need a few sentries no matter what. So, and that's so much gas, it slows down their tech, everything. So getting that, if you can't get probes, is always worth it.
Yeah, Stats, I think, knows that from there he can defend quite comfortably, especially with Blink finishing. So I think Neeb's going to play it safe. He's going to be able to time that Blink of Stats pretty well. Just head on home with his Prism. And from there, usually both players go into a third base. Interestingly, Stats is going into more gates, a forge. I'm wondering if he might want to attack. When you get this many gateways, it's very tempting to go for an attack. And no matter what, you stay on the lower walker counts.
Yeah.
Usually, you know, between 44 and say 48 to 50 max. You make a ton of units and you go for an attack on your opponent's third, hoping that he will have teched too hard and not made as many units as you did.
He's also got this War Prism parked up here. He might want to wait for that Nexus to finish.
Yeah, like I said, this is extremely risky. I think he might actually lose it. Yep.
Wow, that star sets. He blinks forward. The shots are fired, and the Warp Prism is gunned down. that's going to eliminate a lot of options here for Neeb. You losing a Warp Prism like that completely changes the way the game's going to be operating
And
for the
this
next time
definitely
being.
will trigger an attack, I think, here from
so.
Stats, who already had more Stalkers. Like I said, he made a ton of gateways. He's not getting Walkers anymore right now. He's staying on 46 against Neeb, who's making probes up to 52 right now. That's going to mean he has less units. 3 Immortals as well against 2 Sentries to drop the force field. He's 5 against 2.
I don't know if Neeb can hold this. He'll have to have perfect disruption shots, ideally there on the Sentries and the Stalkers, but he does pick up. Neeb needs to get into a position where he's gonna have to push. Stats have to fight and push even to get close to the 3rd Nexus here. He's now rotating around.
And Neeb uses the Purification Nova way too early on basically one of the only disruptors that he has there.
You gotta have that spaced out perfectly because the cooldown's pretty brutal. He's coming in here now. He's gonna push in. Will Stats commit? We have 2 disruptors over here for Neeb. He needs to chuck those forward.
Oh, Stats times perfectly this Purification Nova every single time, pulling back just on time, dropping these force fields. Adepts are going to sneak into the main. Neeb is not paying attention. He's going to lose a ton of probes in that location. And at the same time, again, the Purification Nova misses. Whoa!
Nicely done there. Those Adepts are taken out, but the Nexus still receiving some damage in the force fields. I might just zone this out, but oh god, he does not actually get that explosion there with that Disruptor. Killed that up. GG! Wow, really nicely executed. You know, I think Neeb is a smart player, and I think he's very good, but when you look at Stats versus Neeb in these games, Stats is so much better than Neeb in these engages.
Yeah, this literally looked like Terminator against like a random cop, you know,
Yeah.
that had the misfortune to meet the Terminator somewhere. And
there was
wow.
there was nothing that it seemed like Neeb could do in a lot of those moments, and Stats, the initiator, also very unfortunate. The Neeb with that Warp Prism, losing that earlier on up at the north of the map. Actually, I guess in game 1 he lost the Warp Prism as well. You think he was a little bit too risky in that game number 2, trying to sneak that through? I think so as well.
The thing is, there's always a mind game there of knowing that the opponent's going to have Blink and he's not going to expect you to fly back. So sometimes people are on the map and that's how you punish and you snipe a lot of probes because they're not ready for the Prism to come in. But in this case, it's Stats we're talking about, and he's playing like an absolute beast right now, going up 2-0 in this group.
Very nicely done. We're going to go to a short break. When we come back, more StarCraft II action here at the Intel Extreme Masters.
It was the Kespa Cup semifinal rematch, and this time Stats is able to get revenge with a clean victory over Neeb. So first of all, Stats, congratulations. You now have 2 wins under your belt in this group. A very difficult group at that, so you must be feeling really happy with yourself. 일단 축하드리고요. 이제 2승이잖아요. 그래서 기분 좋을 것 같은데 얘기해 주세요. 기분이 어떤지 지금.
당연히 기분 좋고 유리한 고지를 지금 선점한 것 같아서 뿌듯합니다.
He says, definitely, I'm feeling really good right now, and I feel really great, especially because I feel like I've put myself in a comfortable position in the group and in the standings and everything like that. So, Stats, everything is working out really well for you, and you've played TY, you won, you just played Neeb, and now you're going up against another former teammate of yours in Jackji. Having beaten TY, who's such a great Terran player, does that give you some confidence going up against Jackji? 일단 또 팀원이랑 같이 예전에 같이 있었던 팀원을 붙게 됐는데 그래도 정말 잘하는 테란 선수 전태양 선수를 이겼으니까 조금 더 자신감 있으세요?
네, 자신 있고요. 그렇지만 짝지 선수하고의 이런 평소 연습 때 승률이 제가 좀 많이 졌었거든요. 그래서 좀 그 부분이 걱정되긴 하지만은 그래도 자신 있습니다.
So he actually states that in terms of practice history against Jakji, he says he's lost a lot more times. So because of that, he's a little bit worried, but still he's feeling pretty confident moving forward. Now in this group, Bjorn actually called this the group of death. There's another really strong player in Alive. So overall, when you look at this group, how do you feel that you stand? 일단 아까 변현유 선수랑 얘기했을 때는 이게 죽음의 조다 이렇게 얘기를 하셨는데 또 정말 잘하는 한인석 선수도 남아 있어요. 그래서 그냥 남아 있는 선수들에 대해서 어떻게 생각하세요?
일단은 그 남아 있는 선수들을 좀 비교를 하자면은 확실히 다들 잘하는 선수긴 하지만은 그래도 앞서서 닙 선수나 TY 선수만큼의 그 정도는 아니라고 생각을 해요. 그래서 깔끔하게 5승으로 올라가겠습니다.
So he says, as you stated, the players that are left in this group are definitely really great players. I respect them a lot. But that being said, I truly do believe that TY and Neeb, the players that I just beat in the beginning of this group, are at a class above. So moving forward, I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm going to make sure that I end the day with a 5-0 in my group. So congratulations again, Stats. We'll see if you hold on to that promise. But for now, Claris, how is the rest of Group B looking?
Looking pretty good right now, Smix, as we do have a few more updates to bring to you here on the desk. So let's head over to Maynard first, because I hear that your game is not only heated up, but also kind of cooling down at the very ends of it.
Yeah, it's TY has gotten himself a huge advantage in this game. We're on Proxima Station, and he was up about 60 supply, and Alive's been trying to pull himself back by doing things like drops, and he actually had a really good engagement around here in the natural. TY overextended a bit here. And he's going for another drop at the top here. Looks like a bit of a doomer, but TY, we can see he's on 4 bases. One of them's a goal, was just about to finish. He's been doing a pretty good job with his upgrades. He's really, he did the vintage TVT, two siege tanks, 8 marines in the back of your natural drop that Terrans like to do against each other, and it went very, very well. He killed a ton of SCVs, and somehow Jakji has just managed to be able to even this out and turn it into a bit of a bum clencher, to be honest.
Actually, really surprised to see that, because the last time I looked over at this laptop, it really looked like the game was about to end.
Yeah.
And if TY would lose this game, it really puts him in a very rough spot. That means he starts the group off 0-2. Then I'd still believe in him because he's TY, but then he can't make any slip-ups anymore. And playing against Neeb, playing against even Harstem, and playing against Alive as well, that is far from easy. There are no guaranteed victories. So that could actually be a big story going here into Group B.
No, indeed. If he loses to not only Stats, as you said, but also Jakji, and then potentially Alive down the line, because he's still there and he's still got very good TVT, as he did beat Jakji in that first round, then that could be lights out for TY. So thank you very much, Maynard. Of course, we do have a replay, I believe, from your first game between Alive and Harstem.
Yep. I showed the end of Game 2, but there was actually something very cool about Game 1, which I unfortunately wasn't able to show because I was into Game 2 and then Game 2 ended.
Yeah.
But we want to give credit where credit is due, and even though it hurts my Dutch Pro, it was hard to see Harstem go down, see him get tricked like this. This was really cool. So let's take a look at something that happened in game number 1. If you take a look at it, pretty even game, right? 83 army supply against 76, but Harstem has 13 more workers, down a little bit in army supply, but with resonating glaives, you know, maybe, just maybe, you could make it work. But this is really cool stuff. So Alive showed his entire army, then he leaves the 2 Cyclones behind. So Kevin is like, okay, you know, the army, it's coming here, he's trying to find it, he's waiting. Then he sees a little bit of red, so he shades, but the Cyclones, they were one big distraction to make this happen. So he sets up all these Widow Mines, the 2 liberation zones, and suddenly, well, you gotta go, but you don't want to go.
Mines.
Oh, oh,
Oh God.
and that was the end. I just thought it was a really cool move by
Yeah.
Alive. Good tricks and well-deserved victory. As much as it pains me to say it, he did that incredibly well.
No, absolutely. That was a great move. You're right. Well, thank you very much, gents. As we do conclude that series, as Neva's stats just looking so good at the moment here in Group B. For now, we're going to go to a break, and when we're back, more StarCraft action here from the Intel Extreme Masters.
Let's end this thing.